Hey, thanks for tuning into the Brand Outlaw. My name is Matt Reno, and today we're taking a different approach. Rather than a video with one of us delivering advice, we got the whole Brand Outlaw gang together, Nick, Graham, and myself, for an unscripted conversation. We knew this topic could go in a lot of different directions, so we want to make sure we gave ourselves the right format to cover as much as possible. Today, we're talking about a common roadblock to effective leadership, micromanaging. It's a topic that employees complain about a lot, but we want to focus on employers. Of course, you want to stay in the loop about what's happening in your company. You want to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. But when that goes too far, it turns into micromanaging. Today, we'll ask, why is that bad for business? How is it preventing you from getting the best work possible from your team? And how does it impact your bottom line and growth for your brand? Let's also take a look at it from the perspective of what's going on in the world right now, the Great Resignation. All right, let's dive in. Graham, Nick, good to be talking to you guys.
What's up, man?
Hey.
So the first thing I want to touch on is just a current thing happening today, the Great Resignation. The pandemic really changed the way work happens, and people are not wanting to return to work. And for some, micromanaging might be a big factor in that. What do you guys think about micromanaging's effect on being able to hire people?
Well, I think right now, sort of with the Great Resignation happening, employers might be having a hard time retaining top talent. They might be having a hard time attracting talented people. And a big part of that is that I think people are afraid of going back to a culture where they're going to be micromanaged again, or they're just tired of it. And many times I think that business owners, entrepreneurs are micromanaging without realizing that they're doing it. And so if we want to retain more employees, if we want to attract top talent, we're going to have to learn how to overcome this problem of micromanaging your employees and giving them more freedom. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's just important because this seems to be where the job market is going, that people care more about the environment they're in than even the pay. I mean, there's just too many studies that have shown that people are even willing to work from home for less pay than they are to go into the office, right? And why is that? It's because, at home, I'm safe. I don't have to deal with office politics. I don't have to deal with somebody hovering over me. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So that clearly shows that people want to be treated well. And so that's why this type of topic is so important, because as a leader, it gives you an opportunity to realize the type of culture you're creating through your leadership. And if you're creating a warm environment, a nurturing environment, and really an environment that brings out the best of the people around you, I mean, then you have a greater chance of attracting the top talent, because top talent talks to each other. I mean, it's just how it works. I mean, in our industry, especially as a designer, as a videographer, as one of your job titles, right? That you're talking to many other people that are just like you, and you guys are all spreading the word about where you work, So it's like, even though I know that you guys like me when you're here with me, right? That I'm also not naive to the fact that you're going to tell your wife, you're going to tell your friend, you're going to tell whoever asks you the most common question: what do you do for a living? Where you work? Right? And the minute that you respond to, I work at Digital Blue Beagle, they automatically know, like, I won't even send my kid there. Like my friend hates it. Right? But if you're speaking with, like, man, I work over at Digital Blue Beagle, I feel so fulfilled. Oh my gosh. Like, I've been learning so many things. I really enjoy it. Then the other person's thinking, well, let me know if there's a job opening. If something ever comes up, if you guys grow over there, and man, can you bring me on? Dude, please, I really want to get out of where I'm at. So it's important, like, to really think through, like, what the environment you're creating.
Yeah, I think people want to work for organizations that are authentic. And if an organization claims that we are the kind of organization you can trust you can trust our customer service center. You go and you work for them and you realize that front facing, we say we're all about trust, but behind the scenes, there's all this micromanaging going on, makes you feel like they don't trust you. Then you feel deep down that the organization is inauthentic. And in 2021, 2022, it's going to cost you to be inauthentic. You're going to have to live your story.
We've said this on the Brand Outlaw before. Keep your brand promise. And that's not just an external customer-facing thing. That's got to be internal too, because if you're branding yourself as a trustworthy company and you have a great culture and you're trying to improve the culture outside your business, but inside your business, it's terrible and employees feel smothered. They feel like they can't do their best work. And then they tell other people about it. That's terrible word of mouth for your business, because then people are like, wow, so they say they're this, but they're actually something negative. And then you're going to lose customers. You're going to lose brand equity from that.
Absolutely. There's a quote from Seth Godin that goes, if you're authentic, then all the details will line up. Your menu will match your food, which will seamlessly integrate with your staff and your decor. If you commit to a story and live that story, the contradictions will disappear. I think one of the takeaways is that when you're inauthentic, you're going to have a culture where there's lots of contradictions. And contradictions are toxic for your culture, because the more contradictions that are flowing around, the more likely your employees are going to think the company I work for is a sham. And there's a sense of shame that they're going to feel like they're a part of a company that isn't really contributing. They're going to feel like their work isn't contributing. And that's going to create a lot of toxicity about the way they talk to other people about the brand. So it's really, really crucial to be authentic.
What if I told you that the minute you micromanage, you've already created contradiction for your company? Because, I mean, think about the interviews that you've had, right? You get the best version of the interviewer. And it's not just the person trying to apply for the job that's putting, their Sunday best on. It's also the interviewer, because they want to get the right person for the organization. So they're going to be friendly. They might take you out to lunch. They might talk about how amazing it is to work there and all the great employees there, and the culture that we have here is amazing. It's dialed in. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun here. And then the first day at work, they're micromanaging you. Boom, you've already broke your promise right off the start. And think about the thing that has gotten you the most pissed at your job, that has really got underneath your skin, is when promises are broken. Right? Oh, well, if you do this, this is going to happen. That doesn't happen, you get set off. Like, this is not all the stuff that you promised me. And you didn't tell me in an interview that you were going to hover over me. You didn't tell me in the interview that I wouldn't thrive here. You didn't tell me in the interview that I have zero chance of succeeding. You didn't tell me in the interview that I could do 9 things right, and the one thing I do wrong, you're going to just keep rehashing it over and over and over for another 5 years. You didn't say any of these things in an interview. Matter of fact, you said the opposite. Right? So that's why it's important.
Sometimes the interview is a lie. And they're spinning stories to attract you. Yeah. I remember there was an early agency that I interviewed for, and I remember I walked into the interview and they were complimenting me. Man, you look so good. You're just so nice. Your portfolio, it's amazing. And then, I didn't get the job, but then I met someone who worked for the company. And, man, it was a really, I would almost say an abusive culture, where behind the scenes there was a lot of yelling. They were yelling at each other. There were a lot of promises they weren't keeping. It was a culture where you worked 60, 80 hours a week and it was expected of you. There were people experiencing burnout all over the place. But the front-facing story I heard going in was a total lie. Total lie. I did. I'm really thankful about that, actually. I would have worked for them too if they'd offered me the job. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they did all the right stuff in the interview. But, like you said, there's that contradiction.
And that's scary. I think employees are, I don't know about you, Matt, but I know that I'm kind of scared to apply for jobs because you never know what the smoke screen is. Where are they telling me to get me in the doors, and then what is it going to look like once I'm hired?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's why I think in interviews, it's really great if someone comes in and during the interview process, you're very open about, we offer flex hours here. We're not a 9 to 5. We are not a micromanaging culture. We're going to let you take ownership, and we might have a meeting every so often to evaluate how things are going, but I'm not going to call you at midnight, right, asking you for a progress report, right?
And keeping that brand promise with your employees, it creates brand ambassadors. Every employee is someone who's going to talk up your company. If there's a company T-shirt or something, they're proud to wear that in public. You don't want them like, oh great, I got a crappy T-shirt from my employer. I'm going to stick that in my drawer. So, what are some of the signs that you are micromanaging? Nick, you want to start?
Sure. So, the first sign, if you are micromanaging, is like, are you delegating more? So, like, a good example of this would be like if you're feeling like something needs to be accomplished, are you setting out to do it yourself, or are you tasking those things to another individual? Because generally speaking, when people feel like they're being micromanaged, from my experience, it's when you're not empowering them to get a task done, or they don't have ownership of a project. And so that can come into play with leadership in terms of like stepping in and micromanaging someone. If you're seeing like a project it's not going in a direction that you're wanting it to go, so you'll jump in and try to take it over thinking that you're helping, but actually it's just another form of micromanaging someone. So I would be interested to hear like what is micromanaging to you?
Yeah, definitely. I was actually thinking about this from like my perspective, that a part of like the unwillingness to delegate kind of stems from a lack of trust. And so on my side of things, as a freelancer or as an employee, when I work with someone who doesn't seem to trust me, then that can make me insecure. And then as a consequence, my work gets worse because I'm trying to, I guess, work for approval. I'm kind of set up to fail. I don't know. That's kind of like, I feel a lack of trust, I guess.
So that's interesting you say that, because I think from the other perspective, it's not always about trust. It's about, is this job getting done right? Is this job getting done with quality? Is this job getting done with high standards? So in many situations, it feels like that's going to get done if I come in and help. Not realizing what it's doing is the opposite, that actually it's causing the person that you've given the project to step back and actually not give all of themselves to that project. Because we've seen this, and I've experienced this firsthand, that whenever I've done that, the person becomes more of an order taker. They stop bringing all of their intellectual property to the situation, or all their capital as far as their intellectual selves.
Yeah, actually I have a question for you. I was thinking about we did a video a couple of years ago about how if you're kind of like a leader who steps in and is constantly trying to pick up the pieces or put out fires, what does that do to your employees and your culture that hurts the business leader? I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because you had I really like what you have to say about this.
Well, what ends up happening is that anytime that you're constantly stepping in and you're not empowering your employees, they're not problem solvers. So when a problem comes up, they're always going to look for whoever that leader is, because that's what is expected of them. It's not.
They're going to look for like a hero.
Yeah, exactly.
To come in and save them, basically.
Graham, you said something earlier that brings up a great point. Working for approval. Yeah. So you want your employees' goals to be do the best work possible and have a focus on results. Whatever this project is, you want to get the best results possible for your business. But if you're constantly coming in and critiquing all the little details, then their focus is going to be, what do I have to do to get the boss to approve this project? How can I do this with as few revisions as possible? It's, and that just becomes demoralizing, and you're not getting their best work.
And it can feel like a codependent relationship where you're constantly monitoring your performance on what the boss is doing or saying. And so it then cripples you because if something goes wrong, then let's say your boss is out for a week on vacation, then you're going to put off solving the problem until the boss comes back. And many times the employees are equipped to solve the problem quickly and more efficiently, right?
Yeah. And you actually bring up a good point there, because if you're feeling as a manager or a boss, whatever your title is in terms of leading a team, you feel like you can never leave, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Because it's like you just said it, like, okay, if I'm going to go on vacation, then you see it. They're going to have their email open, they're going to have their phone, they're going to be texting. And then actually in those situations, it creates even more distrust, because it's like, what? It's like the people that are below them, or that are following them, I should say, not below them, but following them, they're looking around like, what, they don't trust me? Like, they're gone. Like, I can get this work done. Why are they still checking in on me? And, it's out of the heart of helping. And I keep going to that because it's just giving the benefit of the doubt here. Now, there are some that it's not about helping, it's about ego. But there are some out there that they feel like they're helping, but everyone back at home is like, gosh, will you just go on vacation already? Leave me alone. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I wanted to start by kind of defining this, because I don't think people set out to be micromanagers, but it just happens. Like, Graham, what's another trait where someone can tell if they're a micromanager? Like something that they would focus on when they should be focusing on something else.
Yeah. And these are some general traits of a micromanager. One of them might be focusing on the urgent over the important. So many times micromanagers are going to want speed of communication, respond to my text, respond to my email. Another one might be reactivity over proactivity. So that would be reacting in the situation to things as they come up, instead of creating positive feedback loops along the way. And structure. So those are a couple traits that I think of. Are there any that I might be missing?
Well, just to elaborate on one, you said like urgent over important. So you're saying like if they demand constant communication, like they send you an email and they expect a response within minutes. Like, now, of course, you want people to respond promptly, but you have to give them some space to just realize, they might be in the middle of focusing on a really important project, and maybe my email can wait a little bit so that they can stay in that flow and get the project done right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is symptomatic of an even deeper issue than just focusing on urgency over importance, but also I think in situations where managers are focusing on the urgent, they probably haven't successfully defined the key metrics that they're trying to follow to become efficient and successful, really. So if you have a copywriter and the quality of their work is what's really important, you don't want that copywriter to be responding to email. You want them to be writing articles. And so what might be happening in that situation is maybe the manager doesn't know what's really crucial to moving the needle. And there's a lack of, alignment and focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nick, earlier you said that it's not always, you want to give them a benefit of the doubt. It's not always a matter of they don't trust their employees, but from the employee's perspective, it could feel like a lack of trust. In your experience, what happens when someone doesn't feel like they're trusted by their supervisors?
They hold back. You guys said it earlier, it's really, you're creating people pleasers. And while there is a place for that, however, if you're wanting real professionals on your team, you're wanting the top talent in your organization, you can't create that type of culture. Because what ends up happening is anytime they have an idea, they're just going to hold it in. They're going to just hoard it. And it's creating this environment of I feel like I can't share this because my boss, he doesn't trust me. He doesn't trust that I know what I'm doing. He doesn't trust that I've spent countless hours and years on my craft. And so, because he's constantly coming in and trying to give his last word. And it's like you guys said, I'm trying to get the approval of my boss. I mean, it's so layered as an employee because it's like, one, you know that you don't want to necessarily step out of line because it could cost me my job, or I could be seen as someone who's disruptive when really I just want to be seen as someone who's valuable to the organization, someone who's actually being used to the fullest of my capabilities. Because in my experience, that seems to be a common feeling, like I want to contribute to this organization. But however, if you create that type of environment, you can just forget about it. I mean, even from a standpoint of you're actually even cutting off communication with other employees and them sharing their ideas. Because it's like what ends up happening is they're going to get with each other, and if they want to share their ideas, first thing they're going to say is, well, I mean, Nikki's probably going to just shut all this down. I mean, we're going to have to run this by him. You know, he wants to give his input, and automatically that just stops conversation. And in my experience, brainstorming and really happens when a group of people get together and they start sharing ideas, and it just feeds off of each other. And that just stops immediately in the minute that you create that type of culture.
Mm-hmm. Like when you're brainstorming, you want people to feel like, you know, a lot of people start off brainstorming with like, there are no bad ideas. And you want people to feel like, you want people to feel that, because you might say that and they might be like, well, it's just a cliche because he's going to shoot my ideas down just like he always does.
But, you know, it's interesting you say that because it's little things that you say that actually creates that environment. So it's little things like, I have a better idea. Not that I have an idea to build upon your idea.
Yeah.
It's things like that that you have to be mindful of your words, because the minute that someone hears that, it's like they just go back into a shell like, oh, I guess I'm not that smart. I guess he has all the brilliant ideas. So why should I contribute if you're always going to come up with better ideas?
I hate it in brainstorming sessions where before you've even gotten to the point you can start brainstorming, people are already saying that idea won't work. They're evaluating ideas already, and in a really good brainstorming session, you're not going to start evaluating the ideas until you have a lot of them on the table. In fact, if anything, you should probably be saying, it's great. How about this? Let me add on to it. Let me build. Let's grow, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So part of it might be that people don't feel safe to make mistakes.
Yeah. They have to have that, or otherwise they're going to lose confidence. And when we have employees that aren't confident, then you're not going to get great work, and that's going to hurt your business overall. But okay, let's look at it from the perspective of a manager, of a CEO, or what have you. They might be thinking, I need to be in the loop on everything happening in my company. It's my company. The buck stops here. I'm responsible for what happens. So I need to be in the loop. I can't let things slip through the cracks. How can they prevent costly mistakes from occurring if they're stepping back and letting go of control?
Well, I mean, the first thing they have to realize is there will be mistakes. It's not even if. There will be. I mean, because you're dealing with humans, so someone's going to make a mistake here and there. And really what you're talking about is the structure of the organization. So if an owner, I mean, we're not talking about someone who has a company of the size of 2 or 3 people. I mean, you're not going to be able to create structure like that. But if you have organizations where you have 50, 60, 70 employees, then structure is really a part of it, because you might have managers, and then those are the people you need to delegate to, right? So it automatically creates an environment of empowerment. But if you're feeling like, well, I got to talk to my managers, then I got to also talk to the people that are underneath the managers and the people that are underneath them, and so forth and so on, then that's a huge problem, because then nothing can ever get done without you. And then you end up creating a bottleneck situation. So it's super important that owners, especially of businesses that are that size and larger, they have to create a structure that empowers the people that are below them, or I should say that are following them, the other leaders of the organization, and that their words should really just stop with them, and that they're entrusting the other leaders to be the guardians of their vision, of their value. And if they've done a good job of communicating those things to the other leaders, then they don't have to be in every single meeting, because they understand that I have hired the right people for my organization. I've built them up. I've empowered them to the point that I can actually step away and they're still going to be an extension of me. So, I like to use sports analogies, right? And because they're just so universal. It's like if you have a Peyton Manning on your team, he is an extension of the coach. If you have somebody who's talented like that and you've put in him all the plays, how to read defenses, and to be able to know the right plays to call, then I could just stand on the sideline and reap the benefits of having somebody like that, because I've entrusted them, I've built them up, and they're actually an extension of my voice. So it's like, for owners, they have to think in that way. Who are the people that are going to be that for my organization?
That's great.
Seems like there also needs to be, you have to realize there are different kinds of errors, different levels. A typo is not a catastrophic error. So is it your job as the owner of the business to be proofreading everything, or have you hired someone that you can feel confident in proofreading? And that you can focus on larger scale errors, preventing those from happening.
Let me just say this, because you're saying a point that I think owners or leaders of an organization need to come to terms with. How do you respond to those errors makes the biggest difference. Because if someone makes a quote unquote catastrophic error, are you just coming in and just like piling on them and just like coming in hot and heavy, like, how dare you do all that stuff? And I'm do something like that again, I'm going to let you go. Then what ends up actually happening even more is that you're continuing to disempower your employees, because now they're going to be scared at every turn. They're going to be questioning everything. So it's important that even during those mistakes, it's a teachable moment. It's also a moment that you can empower the person. They go, you know what? Okay, so like say in this situation, you might have someone running an ad.
Yeah.
Okay? They did something where they accidentally set the bid was maybe supposed to be $10 per click. They actually set it at $100. And you wake up in the next morning, you wake up the next morning and oh my gosh, all of a sudden you get a bill from, Facebook or one of those platforms, and it's $10,000 and you normally spend $500 for the day, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
It's terrifying.
It's horrible. But I gotta tell you though, how you respond to that employee can actually create an employee that's going to be loyal to you.
Yeah.
Because if you go in and you go, you know what, I'm going to give you the account again because I know you've learned your lesson. I know that you're never going to do something like this. So actually, why don't we give him the account where we spend $50,000, right? Because it's just automatically in that person's mind is like, oh, okay. All right, you're right. I'm going to be super vigilant. I'm going to make sure that every single bid I do is just spot on. But if you come in and you're hot and heavy with that person, what ends up happening is they won't even like manage an account. Matter of fact, each time that they go into it, they're going to be so fearful. Then they're going to be going to their managers or whoever is on their team. Hey, can you look at my account? Can you look at my account? And then it's like everybody on the team was like, oh my gosh, like, dude, you're asking me again to look at the account? And it's because how that person is responding to those mistakes really creates that environment of either people pleasers or you're creating teams of professionals. And, and that's one of the things here that we really focus on is that we want to have an environment of professionals. And with that, you as a leader also have to be professional in the way that you handle these situations.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's something that I've learned from you is that two qualities of a good leader is, I'd say, enlisting your employees underneath you, galvanizing them behind your cause, your mission, and then extreme ownership. I think we're an extreme ownership organization where if you step in when a mistake has been made and try to fix it, you're robbing a beautiful gift, a gift of learning. And I think that what happens is if you can let an employee make a mistake, they come back from that mistake so much stronger, right? And that if you step in and try to fix it, you're actually also taking away the gift of having an independent employee who takes ownership of their problems and things slowly get better. Mm-hmm. I think the hard part is accepting, like what you said earlier, that there's short-term pain for a long-term benefit. The short-term pain is that there are going to be mistakes, but that's the price you have to pay to have an employee who really stewards their role and their responsibilities well. So that's, I think, a tough thing to do for most people.
I like to tell this other story, okay? If you're a Laker fan, you totally know this one. Right? I think it was like the 97, 98 playoffs, somewhere around there. In the last second shot against Utah Jazz, the Lakers were playing them. And this was like a young Kobe Bryant. And I think he was like a rookie at the time or a second-year player, one of the two. And normally in those situations, you give it to your veterans. You give it to the guys that have been in the league forever. Well, Kobe decides that he's going to take, I think, 2 or 3 threes at the end of the game. Air balls, every single one of them. And after the game, Shaq puts his arms around him. And it's just like, hey, you're going to be amazing. Keep shooting. Keep going. Keep striving, pretty much. And they go on and win all these championships. So it's like, the opposite could have happened. It could have been like, what are you doing, dude? You're a rookie. Why are you taking these shots? Pass the ball. I'm Shaq. Give it to me. Give it to the other guys over there. They've been in the league longer than you. Don't ever do that again. And it could have demoralized him. And we could be talking about a different legacy for that man. So it's those moments of how you respond is why it's so critical, because you could be stifling someone who can end up being the Kobe of your organization, or in your case, the Larry Bird of the situation, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some ways of preventing micromanaging. What do you think is the biggest trait someone needs to have to avoid being a micromanager?
I'll go first. I think the biggest trait, and you guys have heard me talk about this, to avoiding micromanagement is the ability to look inward. That it really starts there. That if things are not going right in your organization, that you're looking at what you're doing to contribute to that. So, if someone is not hitting the marks with an assignment, did you not train them well enough? Did you not give them enough instructions on what you were wanting? Did you make expectations clear? Because sometimes you can be in a rush and say, hey, I need this. Say, for example, I need this piece of content done by tomorrow. Okay, the person writes the piece of content, you get it, and you're like, what is this? This is terrible. But the reality is, if you really listen to how I described it, I didn't tell them what the content was, what was the goal of the piece, how long it needed to be, what channel it was going to be on, how I was going to use it, right? I didn't give clear instructions about that piece of content that I needed, but I'm looking at the person and going, hey, this is terrible. But the reality is I didn't equip them. So, but if I don't look inwards, if I'm that person that doesn't look inwards, then the first thing I'm going to do is, you know what, forget it. I'll do it. I got this, right? And that's a huge mistake. It's like, and that is a quality that is not often taught, that really it is you that is causing the problems in your organization, that it's not necessarily your employees, but it's really you.
So it's like there's a collection of traits, but they all kind of relate to the same thing. So when we say looking within, having empathy, we're really talking about self-awareness. Like, how self-aware are you? And that's not always taught or easy to learn. I don't know. That's sort of what I take from it.
Yeah, I agree. It's like you're saying managing yourself is more important than managing others. Like you've got to do that work on yourself first to build a good team.
Yeah, there's like maybe a bigger conversation in all this, but if you think about a business, what a business is, you're an entrepreneur and a business owner. A business is a external system of you. Like, you're taking your competencies and you're creating systems to create products, customer service, all these things. And so in the same way that you can create your strengths, you can also create a system of weaknesses too. Like, your shadow becomes manifest in the company you build. Business owners or entrepreneurs who are not willing to look within are going to create the shadow, and then they're not going to want to deal with it because it's too painful, because they're looking at hurt inside of them that they're trying to avoid. What would be advice maybe for people who have businesses that might not be selling as well as they want it to? Employees who might not be performing to the degree that they want them to.
Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. The biggest is having accountability partners, having people in your corner that you are willing to listen to, that are not yes people, that will tell you. I wouldn't say tell you, but will hold a mirror up to you and say, "Hey, this is what I'm noticing about your leadership style. This is just an observation, right? That." And I have my own. So it's like, sometimes if I'm feeling like I want to take over a situation, I'll talk to my accountability partner, I'll be like, hey, I'm having this struggle. I'm thinking of coming in and handling the situation this way. And they'll be blunt and just like, you know what? How about you delegate more?
Yeah.
How about, I think you should take that approach, and then that will strengthen your leadership. And what ends up happening is, like, if you are around just your employees, they're not the best accountability partners, because they can say the wrong thing to get them fired. If they come in and say, you know what, let me hold a mirror up to you, boss. It's like, first of all, they're just going to, most bosses are going to be defensive. And it's really because what they're hearing is critiques. Oh, how dare you come in and critique me? And so anytime you critique someone, it doesn't matter who they are, they're just going to constantly be in a defensive posture, because it's like a fight or flight type of situation. Like, you're threatening me, when the reality is that person wants to help you. So that's why if you have accountability partners, it's important that they're really not associated with your organization, and that they're people that are going to challenge you to grow and to expand. But it also goes into someone's mentality, because if somebody is a narcissist or they're ego-driven, accountability partner won't work with them. Yeah, they're just going to automatically think, I have all the right answers, so who needs you, right? But if somebody doesn't have that particular trait, then accountability partner will be really great for them.
So we're talking about creating just feedback loops, a way that you can get feedback from the people around you to know, am I leading well? How am I not leading well? How am I not giving you guys enough ownership over projects? How am I not empowering you? What can we do kind of better? And we need that kind of feedback on an ongoing basis to keep from slipping into bad habits, maybe.
Yeah, and it seems like having a culture of accountability within your company is really important too, because if the person at the top is setting the standard of accountability and like being open with their employees, like, hey, I messed up on this. This could have been done better. I'm taking responsibility. Everyone else is going to feel safe to take responsibility for their own mistakes. And so then the leader knows that, well, if the team is always taking responsibility and owning up to their mistakes, I don't have to watch them like a hawk and pounce on them every time they do make a mistake, because they're going to be honest with me and they're going to grow from that rather than try to hide everything.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to bring up an objection that maybe our audience is feeling. Hey, Nick, that's great, but you have no idea how many times this employee has messed up. What am I supposed to do with, this person I've entrusted with this responsibility? My ad manager, I tell them to launch a campaign. It's always late, 2 days late. How do I handle those issues, like those chronic problems where maybe you have an employee who's not doing that well? Should I not micromanage them? What should I do in those situations?
That's a good objective, and it's really how they're going at them. So if you're coming at that person and it's like, hey, why are you not always getting this campaign? Well, first of all, if you start off questions with why, they automatically create a defensive mechanism in the person. It's really about slowing down and asking questions like, do you have everything that you need to launch this campaign by Thursday? Do you understand the objective? Do you understand why it's critical that we get this up by Thursday? Do you understand that? Have I thoroughly explained that to you? Right? Because then this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There could be critical pieces of information that has been left out that the person doesn't know. And this goes into like empathy. Like if you just slow down and just think from that person's perspective, maybe they don't realize that it's actually critical to the business to launch on Thursday because it's the same day that your product is launching. It's all this money that you've put behind this project that you want to start getting some return on. So you might have been in a situation, and so you also have to realize that person's not thinking from your perspective either. They're not thinking from, if we're using the same example, how much money you've put into this product and how much like risk is behind the launch of this product and how much your business is depending on this particular product to succeed. And they also don't understand the stress that you're under to make sure that everyone is being provided for. So for them, they could just be thinking, well, I can put this up whenever I need to. I mean, what's the big deal? It's up by Friday. Who cares, right? And they don't understand that actually it is a big deal. And so, but if you come in saying, hey, this is a big deal, you need to get this up by Friday, it's like automatically, it's like, oh gosh, why are you attacking me? Instead of like having that empathy, like, okay, they don't understand. So let me ask that about them. Now, if you're asking these questions and they're deliberately still not doing it, then now you need to just cut it off. Like that person, they understand the objectives. You've explained it. You've even asked these probing questions and they're refusing to do it. Then yeah, that person doesn't want to be there anymore. They've totally checked out, and it's okay to say, you know what, this isn't working out for both of us. I don't think this is your passion, and it's time to go ahead and let you go.
Yeah, I like how like your gut reaction is ask questions, like not why, but hey, what's going on? How am I not supporting you? So I really like how that is disarming, and that allows for a really good conversation. What I also hear you saying is, don't hire the type of employees who need to be micromanaged in the first place. Like that's another element to this, is hiring the right people.
Yeah, let's talk about hiring and training first. Like what role does that play in building a team that that you don't feel the need to micromanage? What are you looking for in an interview process?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, Matt, because we'll talk about this more, in one of our other episodes. We'll go into how to hire the right people. But the beginning part is you got to hire based off your principles, instead of more about what that person has done. Because when you're looking at resumes, you're seeing a lot of accomplishments. Like, okay, this person may have had a successful campaign, or they've built an amazing logo, but what you've come to find out is that their principles don't match your principles.
Yeah.
And so right off the bat, that's going to be a problem. But if you start from that place, your chances of bringing someone on that's more like-minded around the culture it's much higher. It's not saying it's foolproof, but what it's saying is like it's going to reduce the number of employees that you hire that go against your principles.
Yeah, I guess keep in mind, like when you're looking through resumes and people have amazing work in their portfolio, you can still find other people who are doing great work, but not all of them are going to have the traits that you're looking for. So you're saying put a major emphasis on those personality traits.
Yeah, because I mean, okay, so again, using sports analogy, the Patriots way. Right? The Patriots way is about like we bring people into our organization that fit our values. So if you coming in here, you might be as talented as Randy Moss. You might be the best receiver that's ever lived, arguably, right? But if this person's not fitting within our core values, they're actually going to bring down our organization. We have to let them go. So, and that method works. Right? That's why they're so successful. Hate them or love them. They're successful because they follow this principle. And that's where it all starts. It's the foundation of how they go about picking the players for their organization. It's not based off of your talent, but it's based off of your values.
Yeah, we've seen countless stories in sports where players and teams with those intangibles have triumphed over more talented players. I think the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team that won in Lake Placid, I think the quote that their coach gave them before the finals or the semifinals or whatever was, "We don't have the talent to win on talent alone, but we have the heart." And so, that's what he was putting the focus on.
What I feel like maybe the takeaway is hire team players, not rock stars. A rock star might be a diva. You want people who are willing to listen, work together as a team, compensate for their weaknesses. I know that there are times where if we get really good at something, we can have a certain bias where we think that because we're really good at one thing, we're very good at many things. So you'll hire someone, they're really good at graphic design or they're really good at UX design, but because they're so competent in one area, they think that they're really good at everything else. And so that can actually compensate for their weaknesses in a really unhealthy way. What you want is a group of people who are willing to acknowledge, I'm not great at everything. I need to find people with strengths to balance out my strengths.
Yeah. Also when we're talking about hiring and then shortly after, you've got the training period. And one thing I was reading it was an article in Fast Company about micromanaging. One way to prevent it, one tactic, which I thought was a really good idea, was if you don't want to be a micromanager later on down the line, then get more involved in training. So one thing you can do is when you have a new hire, assign key tasks early on that they're early just enough to catch mistakes before they happen and before they become a real problem, so that you can address them early. And so that you're teaching that person how to handle those things and prevent big problems, or you need further training, or you need to put them in another role or something, but you're working out those problems really early so that down the line, you can trust them and there's no need to watch them like a hawk later on.
So like creating better teaching material for how to do whatever,
Whatever your training process is, but also being involved. When you're the leader, it's not just like, hey, I'm just going to come in, make an appearance, nice to meet you, and then later on you're micromanaging. It's be a little more involved early on and figure out those tasks that they can do that are almost like testing grounds, like Nick was talking about before. When someone makes a mistake, you don't necessarily say, well, you're never going to do that again. You use it as a teachable moment. Set up some teachable moments early on so that you're not even worrying about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's kind of like you hire someone, a designer, maybe you give them a few projects that are intended for them to potentially fail. It's like, okay, well, this is your training project or series of training projects where it's kind of like clear that you might not knock it out of the park, but that's okay. It's a part of the process.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This really applies to marketing in a sense, like what you guys are saying. As someone that buys a product, you're being told a certain thing. Then once you become a customer, you have a different experience, right? And it's the same thing with these interviews. Like you're literally doing the same stuff. So if you're doing this in an interview, I promise your product is probably very similar to this. Like there's not much difference. It's like if the experience after I get the product is shitty, then probably your culture is shitty too.
Yeah.
You know, but the hour is, you know what it's like? It's like the Range Rover, okay? Beautiful car. Beautiful, beautiful vehicle. I mean, you know, it's not a knock on anybody that gets it, but the reputation, just the reputation of it is a beautiful car, but it's not well made. That you'll have a great experience buying it, but you're not going to have a great experience having it.
It costs an arm and a leg to fix.
Yes.
Starters, and it breaks down a lot.
Breaks down a lot. That's the reputation.
Yeah.
You know, and that stays with it. It's like it's one of those type of purchases that you're buying based off status. You're not buying it based off of the experience of having that vehicle. And it's one of those, like, how loyal will that customer be in the long run? Like, if I constantly have to trade in this vehicle because it's a lemon, well, you know what? Forget this. I'm gonna go get a Mercedes. I'm gonna go get a Volvo. I'm gonna go get one of these other luxury vehicles.
And that really goes back to business practices and hiring and turnover. Turnover is expensive. It's more expensive to keep hiring people than to keep people. So you want to be focused on retaining your employees. But if you're always, if you're constantly hiring people and then they come to find out, this guy or this woman is always micromanaging me and I feel like I'm totally smothered in my job, I'm just working for approval rather than to do my best, I need to go somewhere else. If you're constantly doing that, you're spending way too much money on turnover. That's a waste.
Yeah, well, it's like having products that you have to return. Right? It's like it's so interesting because branding just covers so many things, is it not? It's like, you know, you just think of it like, well, it's how I go to market. It's how I, you know, position my product. But it's also like, well, how do you position the people in your organization? How do you position the experience that they're having? And it's like all of these things goes into our promise that we're making to the consumer, we're making to our employees. You know, that if my product doesn't live up to all the things that I claim it lives up to, then people return it. And that costs a lot of money for an organization if they're constantly having to deal with people returning a product over and over. You're not going to stay in business very long, right? So, and it's the same thing with your team that I've experienced it and I've seen it where you go into these organizations and a year later, everybody is totally different. Like, wow, your entire organization has changed. That's a red flag. Like, that means promises are not being kept. I mean, even in this time and day where people stay at their jobs for on average 2 years, especially if you're a millennial or younger. However, if you're creating a culture that's keeping its promise, maybe those people stay for 3 or 4 years. Maybe they stay longer than what the average is. And because they're looking around, it's like, you know what it's like? It's like a neighborhood that's most desirable. If this neighborhood is living up to the promise of what it's like to live there, it's super hard to buy a house there, right? Barely anything ever goes on sale. So then when something does go on sale, people pounce on it because they're like, man, nothing ever goes on sale in this neighborhood. People love it. People love the community. People love the entire experience of living in this particular neighborhood. It's lived up to all of the marketing. Right, all the promises have been kept, and the value of that neighborhood is consistently going up, which just shows the value of your product. The value of working in that organization is going up. Then guess what? When that one person leaves, mean, you're going to have like 100 people applying for that person's position, and that person knows it. So they're like, well, I don't want to let go of this good job. I love it here. And I know if I leave, there's going to be 1,000 people looking to apply for this position because it's so coveted, you know?
And then whoever's hiring, they get the pick of the litter. They get to be a lot choosier when there's tons of applicants and they're all high level. All right, thanks for watching our discussion on micromanaging. What do you think? Go ahead and micromanage us in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week on The Brand Outlaw.